15 beginner gardening mistakes that nobody talks about. Hey there, green souls. Welcome back to Earthly Delights, the place where small gardens grow big dreams. If you've ever stood in front of a dying houseplant wondering what went wrong, or looked at your messy backyard wishing it could feel like a calm retreat, you're in the right place, because I've been exactly where you are. I've overwatered, underwatered, planted in the wrong soil, and trusted way too many easy gardening hacks that weren't so easy after all. Most of us who love plants aren't just chasing pretty leaves, we're chasing peace. We want a little space that feels alive, where we can breathe deeper, think clearer, and connect with something real. But here's the truth no one tells beginners. Gardening isn't about perfection. It's about learning the language of life, one leaf at a time. So, in today's video, I'll reveal 15 beginner gardening mistakes that nobody talks about. Honest lessons from my own years of trial, joy, and a few composted failures. By the end, you'll know how to avoid the traps that keep most beginners stuck, and how to let nature work with you, not against you. Before we dig in, take a second to subscribe to Earthly Delights. So every week, your feed feels a little greener, calmer, and more inspired. Part 1, Before you plant, where most mistakes begin. Every thriving garden starts long before the first seed touches soil, and yet this is where most beginners stumble. Not in planting, but in planning. The truth is, your garden doesn't begin at the store, it begins in your imagination. Before you grab a shovel, let's pause, look around, and understand the quiet space you're about to bring to life. 1. Starting at the store. Instead of the soil, I remember the first time I decided to start a garden. I rushed straight to the store. Rows of shiny pots, seed packets, and colorful tags made me feel like I was already halfway to paradise. But within weeks, most of what I bought wilted or didn't fit my space at all. That's because stores are built to sell, not to teach. When you start your gardening journey at the store, you're letting impulse guide your decisions instead of nature. The real magic begins at home. Step outside and observe. How many hours of sunlight does your space get? Where does the rain collect? Is the soil dry, sandy, or rich and dark? These quiet details are your garden's language, and learning to read them will save you months of frustration. So before you spend $1, spend a morning walking your yard or balcony with a notebook in hand. Sketch, dream, measure the light. Let your environment show you what it's ready to grow. A garden designed from understanding, not impulse, always blooms longer. 2. Ignoring your climate and microclimate. One of the biggest reasons beginners struggle isn't lack of effort. It's fighting against their own environment. You can watch a dozen YouTube gardeners thriving with tomatoes in March or basil in winter, but if your climate says otherwise, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Every region has its rhythm, its sun, wind, humidity, and soil temperature. Ignoring that rhythm is like trying to grow a palm tree in a snowstorm. But here's the secret the pros know. Even within one yard, there are microclimates. The shady corner behind your fence might stay cool and moist, while the sunny patch by your driveway could feel like a desert. Take a few days to observe your space. Notice where frost lingers in the morning, where sunlight hits longest, and where wind whips the hardest. These are clues that help you match the right plant to the right spot. When you learn to plant with your climate instead of against it, your garden stops being a struggle. It starts to feel effortless. 3. Dreaming without planning. Every gardener begins with a dream, a vision of overflowing herbs, lush flowers, and baskets of homegrown food. But dreams without structure can quickly turn into chaos. I've met so many people who start by planting whatever catches their eye, only to end up with mismatched pots, overcrowded roots, and a garden that feels more stressful than soothing. Before you buy a single seed, pause and plan. Imagine your garden like you're designing a living room. You wouldn't buy furniture without measuring the space, right? Sketch out where each plant might live. Group them by their sunlight needs, water habits, and height. Create little zones, a leafy corner near shade, a sunny bed for vegetables, a wall for climbers. This simple act of planning transforms your garden from random to intentional. It keeps you from wasting money, and it helps you build a space that matures gracefully through the seasons. Remember, beautiful gardens aren't accidents. They're visions rooted in thoughtful design. Part 2, Setup and First Steps, where enthusiasm turns into overwhelm. This is the stage where excitement takes over, where you finally get your hands dirty and the dream feels real. But it's also where most beginners stumble. The setup phase is full of traps disguised as easy starts. Let's slow down and uncover the hidden mistakes that quietly decide whether your garden thrives or fades. Or starting too small or too lonely. You've probably heard the advice, start small. And while that sounds safe, it can also make gardening feel dull. I've seen so many people begin with just one plant, one pot of basil, one lonely tomato vine, and within a few weeks, their excitement fades. Why? Because one plant can't teach you enough, and it can't hold your attention. Gardening is a conversation with nature. If you only plant one voice, the dialogue dies fast. Instead, try starting with a small but diverse group, a few leafy greens, a root vegetable, and one flowering plant. This variety keeps you engaged and helps you learn how different species grow together. The beauty of diversity is that the plants actually help one another. Deep-rooted ones pull moisture for shallow-rooted friends, leafy plants shade the soil, and flowers invite pollinators. You don't need a huge garden, just a few companions working in harmony. In nature, nothing grows alone. Neither should your first plant. 5. Buying cheap tools and materials. I get it. When you're just starting out, it's tempting to grab the cheapest soil, tools, and planters you can find. After all, you don't want to invest too much in something new. But here's the harsh truth. Cheap tools break, poor soil suffocates roots, and low-quality seeds rarely sprout. What feels like saving money now often costs you double later, in frustration, wasted time, and lost plants. There's a saying my grandfather used to tell me, buy cheap, pay twice. In gardening, it couldn't be truer. Choose the best quality you can reasonably afford. Sharp pruners that last, rich soil full of organic matter, sturdy gloves that protect your hands. These aren't luxuries, they're the foundation of your success. When you surround yourself with good materials, gardening becomes smoother, calmer, and more enjoyable. You'll spend less time fixing problems and more time actually connecting with your plants. And that's the real investment that pays back for years. 6. Picking containers. Before you're ready. Many beginners believe containers are the easiest way to start. They look neat, portable, and promise less mess. But here's what no one tells you. Potted plants live in isolation. They rely completely on you for water, nutrients, and stability. One missed watering, one hot afternoon, and your thriving plant can suddenly collapse. When I first started, I filled my balcony with pots of herbs and flowers. It looked lovely for about a week. Then the heat hit and everything began drying out twice a day. I spent more time rescuing plants than enjoying them. Containers can be wonderful once you understand how soil, drainage, and temperature interact. But as a beginner, it's much easier to start with raised beds or directly in the ground. If you have limited space, try breathable grow bags. They hold moisture better and mimic natural soil conditions. Let your first plants root in something forgiving, not fragile. Your confidence will grow as fast as your greens. 7. Forgetting about accessibility. One subtle mistake new gardeners make is putting their garden too far away, tucked behind the house, hidden in a back corner, or out of sight on the balcony. At first it seems fine, but out of sight soon becomes out of mind. Weeks pass, weeds take over, and watering turns into a chore instead of a joy. The truth is, the best gardens are the ones you see every day. When your plants are near your daily path, beside your front steps, outside your kitchen window, or along the walkway you use each morning, caring for them becomes second nature. You'll notice small changes, new blooms, and early signs of trouble before it's too late. Accessibility isn't just about convenience, it's about connection. The closer your garden is to your life, the more likely it will become part of your routine. So place your plants where they can remind you to breathe, slow down, and reconnect with the beauty growing right beside you. Part 3, the daily growth stage, where most people quit. This is where the excitement starts to fade and reality sets in. The soil dries faster than expected, leaves turn yellow, and your perfect vision begins to look messy. But this stage, the messy middle, is where real gardeners are made. Let's explore the quiet lessons that transform frustration into growth. 8. Expecting perfection. Instead of growth. When I first started gardening, I wanted every leaf to look Instagram perfect, shiny, flawless, and vibrant. But nature doesn't do perfect. It does alive. A few holes in the leaves, uneven growth, or a plant that blooms late aren't failures. They're signs that life is happening exactly as it should. Many beginners quit because they think imperfections mean they've done something wrong. The truth is, even the most experienced gardeners lose plants. Gardening isn't a test to pass. It's a relationship to nurture. Every yellow leaf, every pest, every wilt teaches you something new about patience and balance. Instead of chasing perfection, chase understanding. Ask yourself, what is this plant trying to tell me? Over time, you'll start to read the silent language of nature. And that's when gardening becomes magic. Your goal isn't a flawless garden. It's one that reflects the rhythm of real life. Unpredictable, forgiving, and beautifully imperfect. 9. Not making gardening a habit. Most gardens don't fail because of weather or pests. They fail because their owners forget to show up. Plants don't need you all day, but they do need you regularly. Think of your garden like a living friend who thrives on small, consistent attention. I learned this lesson the hard way when I tried to catch up on weekends, only to find my soil dry and my herbs gone crispy. The secret isn't finding more time, it's weaving gardening into the life you already live. Check your plants after your morning coffee. Water them when you come home from work. Pull a few weeds while you wait for dinner to cook. These tiny habits keep your garden alive and your connection strong. I call it the 5-minute rule. Spend just 5 mindful minutes in your garden each day. Not to rush, but to notice. The smell of soil, the sound of bees, the new leaf unfolding. Those minutes don't just grow plants, they grow peace. Tsukuwasan 10 planting what looks good, not what you'll eat. We've all fallen for it. The glossy seed packets, the trendy plant varieties that promise to turn your garden into a Pinterest dream. But beauty alone doesn't keep you motivated. When you grow plants that never end up on your plate, they quickly lose meaning. Gardening becomes just decoration instead of nourishment. The most satisfying gardens are the ones that feed your senses and your table. Think about what you actually love to cook or eat. Maybe it's basil for your pasta, mint for your tea, or chili peppers for that kick of flavor. These are the plants that bring joy twice. Once when you grow them, and again when you taste them. Start with your kitchen habits, not a catalog. The meals you make most often should guide what you plant first. When your garden becomes part of your daily life, not just your backyard, caring for it feels less like a chore and more like self-care. Part 4. The unseen foundations. What actually determines success? What happens beneath the surface decides everything. The healthiest gardens don't just have pretty leaves. They have strong, living foundations. This part is about the invisible forces that quietly shape every thriving garden. The soil, the creatures, and the balance that keeps nature's heartbeat steady. 11. Treating soil. Like dirt, most beginners see soil as just a place to put plants. But real gardeners know it's a living universe. Beneath every sprout is an entire ecosystem of fungi, worms, and microbes working together like a quiet orchestra. When we ignore that life, we starve our plants from the roots up. I used to dump whatever soil mix I found on sale into my garden beds, thinking it didn't matter. The results? Weak stems, yellow leaves, and endless frustration. Then I learned to feed the soil, not the plant. Compost, fallen leaves, coffee grounds, and even kitchen scraps. These are gold for your garden. They create structure, retain moisture, and invite the living helpers your plants depend on. Healthy soil smells earthy, feels springy, and holds water like a sponge. When you care for it like a living thing, your plants stop surviving and start thriving. It's the difference between forcing growth and allowing life to unfold naturally. 12. Being shocked by pests and critters. Here's a truth that surprises many beginners. You're not the only one excited about your garden. Birds, squirrels, caterpillars, and aphids love it too. The moment you grow something worth eating, nature takes notice. I used to panic every time I saw holes in my leaves or a trail of ants, thinking I had failed. But pests aren't a sign of failure. They're a sign of life. Instead of trying to fight nature, learn to work with it. Companion planting, like growing marigolds beside tomatoes or basil near peppers, naturally deters many insects. Inviting birds, bees, and ladybugs creates balance by keeping harmful pests in check. A few nibbled leaves won't ruin your garden, but harsh chemicals might. The goal isn't to build a fortress, it's to build harmony. Once you understand that your garden is part of a living ecosystem, you'll stop fearing every bug and start seeing nature as your greatest partner. 13. Trusting quick fixes, fertilizers, and sprays. When something goes wrong, our instinct is to fix it fast, and that's where most gardeners go astray. Brightly labeled fertilizers and miracle. Sprays promise instant results, but they often trade short-term growth for long-term damage. Synthetic fertilizers may make your plants grow faster, but they strip life from your soil, leaving it dependent and weak. I've been there. Desperate to revive fading leaves, I poured chemicals into the soil, only to watch the problem return worse than before. Nature doesn't rush, and neither should we. True growth comes from balance, not speed. Instead of chemical shortcuts, build natural strength. Use compost tea, banana peel water, or diluted seaweed solutions. They feed the soil slowly, nurturing instead of forcing. Remember, every quick fix has a hidden cost. A patient gardener grows roots that last, both in their soil and in themselves. The best gardens aren't miracles. They're relationships built over time. 14. Mulching the wrong way. Mulch can be your garden's best friend, or its silent enemy. Many beginners pile on thick layers of wood chips or bark, thinking they're protecting their plants. But too much mulch suffocates roots, locks out water, and invites pests to hide beneath the surface. I once buried my garden under a mountain of mulch, only to discover rotting stems and moldy soil weeks later. The secret isn't skipping mulch, it's using it wisely. Think of it as a light blanket, not a winter coat. Use natural, breathable materials like shredded leaves, grass clippings, or straw, and keep them just an inch or two thick. Better yet, try living mulch. Low-growing herbs, spinach, or lettuce planted around your main crops. They shade the soil, keep moisture in, and feed you too. When mulch breathes, your garden breathes. Done right, it balances water, temperature, and nutrients, creating a quiet harmony that helps every root below thrive. Part 5. Mindset. Where the real growth happens. By now, you've learned how to plant smarter, nurture deeper, and work with nature instead of against it. But the final lesson isn't about soil or sunlight. It's about mindset. Gardening isn't just a skill. It's a mirror of how we live and grow. Let's talk about the inner mistakes that quietly shape every gardener's journey. 15. Listening to too many voices. In today's world, there's endless advice, videos, blogs, reels, and quick life hacks for every plant problem. It's easy to get lost in the noise. I once spent nights scrolling through tips from 10 different gardeners, each saying something completely opposite. By the end, I wasn't inspired. I was confused, anxious, and afraid to even water my plants the wrong way. Gardening isn't meant to be a race for perfect knowledge. It's an experience meant to be felt. Choose one or two trusted sources that align with your climate and your values, then let your hands do the rest of the learning. Plants will tell you more through their leaves and roots than any online tutorial ever could. When you stop comparing and start connecting, your garden begins to reflect you. The rhythm of your care, your patience, your mistakes, all of it becomes part of a living masterpiece that no one else can teach. Your garden is a mirror, not a test. Every gardener begins with hope, and every plant tests that hope in its own quiet way. You'll lose some, you'll revive others. You'll learn that the beauty of gardening isn't in control, but in cooperation. Each mistake you've made or will make is not a failure. It's a conversation with nature, a step toward wisdom. Remember this: your plants aren't judging you. They don't care about perfect timing or fancy tools. They only need your patience, your curiosity, and your willingness to try again. When you slow down and listen, you'll start to hear your garden speak. Through the crunch of soil underfoot, the scent of rain, the way a leaf turns toward light. So, which of these 15 mistakes have you made before? Or maybe you discovered your own lesson the hard way. Share it in the comments. Your story might be the one that helps another gardener keep going. And if today's video inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our Earthly Delights community, where every week we grow together. One leaf, one lesson, one beautiful mistake at a time.